He says it's not fear at all, as if he'd be scared of that guy. Krot looks a little awkward, and our boy says he already planned to pass through this place on the way back. The only thing that changed was the order of things. As if he were running away from the first prince, Krot's got a little smirk going. Calyx knows that, as always, the bastards are thinking he's just some kind of kid. Our boy knows he has to become class 4, but with Russell's training, it's going to take an eternity, and that's the reason he came to Paznew. There's a dungeon in this region where you can get an S-rank skill. A dungeon with a good reward is already rare, especially ones he can do with his weak body. To complete any of the other ones, they need a giant expedition party. Obviously, though, nobles would start complaining, and that's where Paznew stands out. It's a free city without any nobles, a place where you can easily hire mercenaries and form parties without trouble. He points to the horizon, saying they've finally reached the free city of Paznew. At the entrance, they were told to line up and sign the documents. Our boy is just a skeleton at that point, saying he lied on the form. Already at an inn, our boy thanks everyone for their hard work. Before they left again, though, they needed to get the fatigue out of their bodies, and he asks if anyone knows a good place for that. The guys are all excited, asking if he means that place. Krot is shocked that he'd suggest something like that, but oh well, everyone's already heading out. I thought they were going to the house of the world's oldest profession, but that's not the case. They're just out there in the middle of the city where there's food, a little party going on, when suddenly, someone welcomes everyone. Another fanboy enters the scene and already pulls Krot's arm, saying this place has the best alcohol in town. Apparently, Calyx already recognizes it and comes in, saying the place seems pretty good. Inside, it's just a normal little bar, and everyone's asking why Krot isn't drinking. He replies that if anything happens to the young master, he has to be at 100%, so he's going to avoid that. Our boy, who was observing, then sees the guy who pulled him in at the entrance and calls out to him, who turns around kind of confused. Calyx walks over, telling him to come closer and asks if there's a quieter place or even another shop would be fine. The kid replies that there is, but obviously, if he takes them to another place, he's going to run into trouble. Besides, it seemed like his men were enjoying themselves, so he did me too. Calyx, however, says he just needs a guide to take him and one other person to a quiet hall. He tosses a gold coin in the air and says that will be the payment. The kid grabs it all happy and says he gets it, but in return, he'd have to leave the rest of the nights they're eating and drinking. The boy says that's fine and calls for Krot. Sometime later, they're in the city, with the kid showing them the way. Our boy asks if he's lived in Paznew for long, and he says yes, for over 10 years. That surprises our boy, who says he doesn't even look like he's 10 years old, which makes the kid swear, saying he's 14. Krot is just laughing at the two of them, but then Calyx asks, if he's been there for 10 years, he must know who the strongest person in Paznew is. A little embarrassed, the kid says it's probably Mr. Omar, who is the leader of the Steel Shield mercenaries. But the truth is, he's never fought the other 3 leaders, so maybe it's just a rumor. Calyx tells him to talk about the other 2 groups then, and he's surprised that the boy doesn't know anything. But he explains the other groups are the Red Wolf and the Black Wing. Together, the 3 make up the largest mercenary groups in the city. Our boy asks how the spring hunting went, and he replies that since the taverns are packed, it definitely wasn't bad. But apparently the adults are worried because something called the supermoon is coming. At that moment, the kid says they've arrived. Everyone is standing in front of a giant mansion. A super dark-looking girl suddenly shows up, saying she knows they don't have a reservation. So what are they doing there? Our boy takes a look and says it was this kid who guided him there. The woman says Yurine did that again, but she loses her temper, saying they're closed today and asks them to leave. But then she notices something strange and catches Calyx's gaze. It seems like he's looking at the ring, and that looks a little worrying to her. I don't know why. Maybe the boy is into married women. At that moment, the guy tries to say that Yurine didn't guide him properly, so he'll have to give that coin back. The kid gets startled and says that's not true. He guided them just fine. Then he hides and says that now he realizes they weren't looking for women, but for information, so he's not giving that back. But then, the woman calls Yurine's name, and he starts trembling, hand going into his pocket. In that panic, our boy gives her a stare, status window active man. Celestina Urina was the one he was looking for. Not just the girl, but down below it shows she has an SS rank finance talent. In the future, she'd become the one we've been searching for. It's just a shame she won't have a kid. Damn this story. I'm already missing Layla. Obviously, Calyx is excited. Seems like his whole plan to travel to the capital was just an excuse to find this person. But by chance, he found her right there. He then asks if this is the place where he can get information, and she says yes. But suddenly, the other woman there already tells the guys to raise their crossbows and orders Urina to get away from him. Right away, Krot draws his sword and says they have no idea who they're pointing those at. The woman, though, replies that in a high-class hall like this, it's rare for people to be so ignorant as to insist. But once in a while, people like them show up, and that's why they have to be careful. Obviously, if they left quietly now, nothing would happen to them. But Calyx says she's being too rigid. If she keeps turning people away the moment they arrive without even having a conversation, how is she supposed to gain new allies? Urina is asking to give them a chance, but the woman just tells her to shut up. Then Calyx says that the woman might have a beauty that defies age, but she didn't seem to be smarter than the young master. Maybe it's Urina who's actually the master of the house? Now I'm a bit confused. But the woman seems to know just how talented the girl is. She says fine then and tells him to say what he is before he ends up with a hole in his forehead. Calyx simply replies that she probably already knows, so it'd be best for her to take off that ring and give it to the girl behind her. The woman just asks if he has any idea what that means, to which our boy replies that with the symbol of Agrapnes, my god, what a difficult name, it's obvious he knows. Why wouldn't she want to be recognized walking around like that? Daenerys even gave a little wink, and just like that, she yells out the name Prince Calyx, already aiming arrows, man. Of course, the bastard says that apparently she knew who he was from the start and should have just said so. What he doesn't get is whether she just knows his name, or she knows how he found this place, or what information he wants, and what he came there to offer or receive. The woman is kind of confused. It seems only royalty should be able to recognize her because of that ring, which makes it all weirder, since this kid is just the heir of some regional territory. Calyx realizes she's confused and asks if she's really not going to answer anything. He calls for Urina and wants to know her opinion. Urina replies that the more complex a problem is, the simpler the answer. Calyx seems smart and maybe was the kind of person who doesn't forget what he sees. That royal symbol appears in countless history books, so he must have seen it somewhere. Of course, it was also just the symbol of a long-dead family that meant nothing now. While the woman is yelling at the two of them, they're busy complimenting each other. Then she asks for patience, says fine, and tells them to lower their weapons. Right then, she turns around and says that this place is too exposed and tells him to get inside already. Man, the living room already has a bed, huh? This really is the house of the working women, my guy. Just one room for fun. Wow, the boy is thinking the same thing, man. This is the kind of place you walk into, eat and drink, head to bed, and goodbye. He then says that being in that hall with a woman was a little tense. But the other woman just replies that she hasn't even decided yet if she's going to let him go home safely or not. Calyx, however, says that the one who should be trying to convince him is her. The hospitality of this place was terrible. They should at least be serving some tea. The woman claps her hands, man, and the tough working ladies arrive. Looks like they're all known as the daughters of Eridona. Maybe that's the name of the older woman, right? And these tough ones are the ones financially backing the first prince, man. Oh, and our girl is here because she's planning to invest the money he stole into them, right, kid? Trust is the most important thing for a merchant. The only problem is that Urina is still too young right now. The question is, will he wait for her to grow up to make an offer or buy her now and manage her himself? Stating that he drank the tea without hesitation, the woman asks if he's not afraid it might be poisoned. But the rascal replies that if it was poisoned, he'd already know. She's a little confused with this sickly boy and says they should just get back to the topic. First, they wouldn't make any deals unless they were sure he'd keep the secret. But our boy just throws 100,000 into the air, man. She's all thrown off and he says that's right. He was going to invest 100,000 gold. Before she can reply, he says actually he's the one who wants to know if she won't take the money and disappear. Before the woman can answer, someone says that's way too much money to turn down. Everyone looks over, man. It's Urina, already changed clothes and her hair's grown out. Was tied up inside the hat. Sneaky girl. She says her name is Celestina Urina, but for now she's just a fugitive, so they could call her Urini. Apparently she's actually a princess, man. That king's got a bunch of kids spread across the world like every king in a story, right? Our boy already realized she was just pretending to be a naive little girl. Looks like it was worth it. Just buy this crazy girl already. That's what I'm guessing, okay. I'm not even sure if he wants to buy her or not. I'm kind of confused too. But he says being a princess doesn't guarantee she has the ability to make money, and if she wants his investment, she'll have to explain herself. Urina says they have a network of fugitives and spies that can gather information super fast. And obviously, the basics of investing are to buy low and sell high, right, man? He replies that he understands she's trying to profit through distribution, but that was a field with some pretty harsh competition. Besides, there was no guarantee her rivals, the royal merchants, would play by the rules. They had way more powerful people backing them, and at any moment her resources could be blocked. She's a little thrown off and says every business has its risks, but you shouldn't underestimate this organization. It's not like they couldn't smuggle things. Calyx says that can't be the case. The money has to be used legally. That's because he wants to prove the honest origin of the business. Basically legitimize it in the market, right? Urina immediately understands and says he probably stole it from someone. To which he responds that you would never steal. That was compensation for moral damage done to him. She repeats it and he stands up, telling her to stop saying he steals money. Besides, it was her who should be convincing him she won't run off with his money. And she says he doesn't have to worry, because the simplest way to solve that is for her to become the hostage herself. Madame Eridona right there, man, says she's going crazy. But Urina says 10 years have already passed. Her people have been wandering for a long time through these unknown lands. At this rate, they'd always remain a criminal group. The whole organization would collapse. The one is hesitant, but Urina insists, saying that with 100,000 gold coins, it would be enough to help the whole family. Not to mention that she doesn't even care about reclaiming her position. All she wants is for them not to suffer hardship anymore. But man, Calix just tells both of them to cut the theatrics. The other woman over there got pissed, obviously turned around cursing, but he just replies that he doesn't care about her past. If she was expecting to be treated like a princess, she should go back to the kingdom of Jaipur right now. The other one is fuming, but then Urena stands up, grabs a knife, cuts her hair, and says she's not a princess anymore. He should be confused, thinking she didn't want to follow the business world, and he was sure he already had an idea she'd do something like that. Calix says his plan was to take everything with her, but unfortunately, she was still too young for him to trust. Until that changes, he would guide her. Urena tells him to answer. How old is he anyway, since he doesn't look that much older? Holy crap, I'm finding this funny. Even if she's more mature, she's still just a kid in the end. The negotiator says he's only there to provide the money. Besides, his age doesn't matter here, right? Since he's the one bankrolling everything. Urena sits down and tells him to go ahead and say his plan already, but he says that before that, he needs his issue resolved. They want the information he asked for. Urena tells the other woman to deliver everything, and she just replies, whoever has God, rise up. The boys notice the woman who was cursing at him before has now completely changed. Apparently, she knows how to separate business from emotion. In a room full of books and papers all over the floor, she says he'll find all the info he needs to read. He thanks her and says he's starting now. Next morning, he wakes up exhausted. He's not even that concerned about the Urena stuff anymore. The issue now is figuring out how to conquer the dungeon. The first option is to go with the elite members he brought, or, obviously, hire other mercenaries. The problem with too many mercenaries is it increases the chances of secrets leaking. That's why the best option would be to go with just an elite team. In that case, he at least need a mage. Because for his team full of knights, a single mage would make a massive difference in strategy. That's why these bastards are so valuable. And after checking all the records of the city, he found a rank 6 mage, the most powerful one living in the region. An old man known as Edelin Belchua. Right away, he wants to ask Urena something, but Manang says she's in class, and bam, door in his face. Another maid arrives, telling him to have some tea in the meantime. Looking at his own reflection, our boy can't believe he found a guy like that. A rank 6 was the equivalent of Russell, right? But a mage. The problem for our boy is that before his father, the Shikin family didn't have anything in this world, and he's the first person to take over right after, without it even being official. So the chances of that Edelin accepting are really low. Then Urena shows up, already asking where the money is and when they're starting the business. But he tells her to calm down first. He needs to do something else before that. Besides, the project with her would take at least 6 months to 1 year to kick off. She's mad but tries to stay calm and shows a paper. It's a confirmation of a 30,000 gold coin deposit. She says it looks legit, but it's only 30,000, right? And he replies that obviously he wasn't going to just send all 100,000 out of nowhere. Urena agrees and says for now, that amount from her big bro is enough. He's kind of confused with this big bro thing, and she just says that anyone who gives that much money is automatically a big bro man. Then she tells him to go ahead and say why he called her there. He then asks if she knows someone named Edelin Belchua, and from her reaction, it's obvious she does. Immediately, Aridona appears from the corner, saying that Edelin Belchua is suspected of being a black mage. Urena says he's not, and the woman agrees, but she's just giving the heads up so he's aware and avoids suspicion. Calix has already gathered a lot of information on this guy. Seems like he's someone with a difficult personality but not a bad person. Then he says that if anything happens, he'll take responsibility, but he wants to know where the guy is. Aridona, however, warns him that she's not going to say anything and that he'd better forget about this person. But I don't get it, man. 1 second later, she's already talking, saying that if he heads to the north gate of Poznu, there's a cemetery up on the village mountain and a small house. Obviously, guy is right there. He asks how well they know him, and she says they only know what's written in the books. He's someone who distanced himself from this place a few years ago and seems to be focused on some weird experiments. Besides that, he almost never goes out. He asked about the experiments, and she says that obviously, mages hate when anything about their research leaks. Urena, however, is hesitant. She asks if he's really going to that old man's house. Confused, he wants to know why she's acting like that. Did he do something? Urena says that every time she sees him, she gets the feeling she's going to end up broke for some reason. He better be careful. No matter how tempting the offer is, he should refuse. Then she asks if he understood, and he says yes, he completely understood. She then says that especially he was not to use the 100,000 he promised to invest in her because that was already hers. He realizes that apparently something happened between them, but right then, Aridona takes Urena away. Not understanding any of that, it was time to go meet Tadwi Loon up north at a community cemetery. Krot says they've arrived, and both of them think it looks like a little house from a fairy tale. They go to the door, knock, and ask if anyone's there. The person inside just replies that whoever it is, just open the door and come in. The two of them are looking at each other, while our boy thinks, this guy must be confident. Huh. If it was a monster, an attack, a bandit, who just lets people walk in like that. The door opens, and he's sure this guy is confident in what he does. With the cauldron and stuff on the shelves, the place gives off black mage vibes. Not to mention the man himself gave off a completely different impression than the books. He stares at the old man, then coughs and says he came to meet him and introduces himself as Calix Shiken. Edelin replies that it's a shame, but he knows nothing of the outside world, so if he just said a great name, he has no idea. Wow, now he says he's not from some great family and that title doesn't mean much. And even if it did, it's not something that compares to someone who reached the level of Archmage. The old man turns and says he's good with words. It's just a shame he doesn't have time to sit around chatting with him. So if he doesn't get to the point, they'll be kicked out now. Calix gets straight to the point, man. He says, I want to conquer a dungeon nearby and thought you might give me a hand, friend. The old man asks if he's talking about the Impalan Mountains. Our boy smiles and says that's exactly the one. The old man drops his spoon and turns around, saying it's been a long time since he's seen a kid as crazy as this one. Our boy is calm while Crot is losing it. Seems like he's mad the old man won't stop insulting Calix, but he's up against an Archmage, what's he gonna do? Calix then says he's not going to hold back on the offer. The old man asks if he's talking about money. That was something that only had value if he survived, so it was best to go home if he valued his life. Out of nowhere, Calix loses it and says that if the old man needs anything for his research, he just has to ask. But the old man yells back, saying it seems like he's just there to snoop around his research and they better get lost. The two are trembling, and in the next scene, he's face down on the table. Yurina asks if he lost all the money, and he says that Dan old man wasn't even interested in his money. She thinks it's strange, and our boy asks her to just explain her story with that old man. She then explains that when Edelin got there, she invested some money. He asks what happened, and she says that obviously old man never paid her back. Crot gets mad and says it's insane. An old man stealing money from a child, since obviously she must have been even younger back then. Calix asks if she has a contract, and she says obviously she does. She won't lose it until she gets paid. Seems like the old man owed 30 gold, which was 6 years of Crot's salary. Now I'm confused. Didn't he offer 100,000? If 30 gold is 6 years of work, then how much is 100,000? Yeah, you can do the math here, right? That's like 20,000 years of work. I think they're mixing up the values, or maybe there's going to be a plot twist coming. But yeah, Yurina is a wreck. Crot asks how she stayed so calm after all that, and she immediately yells, saying that clearly she's not calm. But that damned old man has no money to pay back. He's just like Crot, who's broke. Poor guy even got roasted for free. Calix says that if she wants, he can take on the contract. She doesn't need to worry about it. But Yurina says there's no way she's letting that old man work hard and still get paid double with interest. Our boy makes a face and says maybe that'd be easy to pull on a regular person, but it's not going to work on a rank 6 mage. She asks if he's saying there's no way to get it back, and he says probably not. That's because she didn't just give the old man money. She invested it to be part of the profits, meaning she took on the risk of failure. Maybe if she were stronger, she could recover the investment, but clearly, she's not. Yurina replies that he doesn't seem much stronger than the old man either. She saw his training, and it wasn't impressive. They argue, and Calix realizes that as smart as she seems, she's still very inexperienced. The fact she thought a contract was enough to control a rank 6 mage showed how much of a child she still was. He says she has to learn that a merchant also needs to know when they've lost. The next step is to create a new opportunity to recover. At least if she made the contract, she must know what he was researching, since she invested in it. And with that, he says he'll take on the contract for 50 gold. She's looking beat up, but says fine, on one condition, that she gets to see everything that happens. Yurina walks off and gives a thumbs up to Crot. A while later, she brings all the books related to the old man's research. Our boy is about to look at them, but right then, Aridona is walking down the hallway and calls for the princess. They turn around and she's kind of hunched over, trying to explain something. A bit later, she finds out what happened and is fuming, saying she already made it clear. No business deals behind her back. Yurina replies that in the end, she always says no to everything. So the woman takes her away, saying today's lesson will be extra long. Crot and Calix look at each other and say it's time to get to work. The day fades with them spending all their time there reading about that old man's experiments and studies. Calix is starting to think convincing that Guy is going to be harder than he expected. Maybe it'd be better to go swim through the dungeon first or go and come back later to convince him. Kind of show that he can survive a little. Then he wakes up Crot, who asks where they're going. Our boy says they're going to hunt for mercenaries and head to the dungeon. But here, we are the next day. Looks like he called the guy just to go to sleep, apparently. There they are in front of the mercenary district. As soon as he walks in, man, everyone in the place goes quiet and stares. Looks like this is not the kind of place a high-ranking noble should be walking into. But then Calix steps forward and says he's there to hire some mercenaries. Hesitant, everyone trembling, the guy says he understands, but asks him to wait a moment. The two of them are confused, and Crot says he must have gone to call whoever's in charge. An old man then shows up, thanking the two for their presence. But Crot already steps in front of Calix, and in the reflection of our boy's eye, you can tell he's already seen this guy's status window and says that, yeah, he's no joke. Unfortunately, we don't get to see the window. Damn it. Our boy then says he heard that class 4 or higher mercenaries are rare. The old man says yes, because when someone reaches that level, they usually go off to a rural territory and live as a knight. Oof, he just threw shade at Krot, and you can tell he felt it. The guy opens the door, but says many still prefer the free life and stay there. He says what surprises him is that the boy came in person. He should have just sent a representative. But Calix replies that he's sure a representative wouldn't secure the contract he wants. The old man stares, realizing that this damn kid looks young, but clearly wasn't going to be easy to deal with. Already inside the room, he asks the boy to explain what he's looking for. Calix immediately says that the mission's danger level is rank A, and that's why the reward would be 2.5 times greater than their weekly payment, and he wants the contract to last 1 month. The contract could be extended in 2-week increments with additional pay. He would also pay half up front. Any rank S mercenary serving on this mission would have full authority over the formation. He wanted a maximum of 120 combatants and 80 support units. The old man's suspicions are confirmed. Man, he already realizes this damn kid wouldn't be easy. All the request details were crystal clear, but he still didn't know exactly what this mission was, and the conditions were very well balanced. He'd seem weak if he accepted, but also kind of foolish to reject something with such good reasoning. He then replies that finding a group of that size willing to accept will be difficult, and asks for more details. Calix says that's fine, but if he shares any information, the reward will be reduced. Our boy is a confident man. After playing this damn game and getting denied thousands and thousands of times, negotiations are where he shines. To him, this guy was an amateur. Man, the guy says all right, he'll accept the conditions exactly as they are. He extends his hand and says he's never met a noble like him. All he asks is that he guarantee most of the mercenaries come back alive. Calix replies that he'll do his best. The old man then asks where the boy is staying, so he can send the mercenary captain to speak with him. The details could be discussed with that guy. Our boy thanks him, and a while later he's walking through the city sighing, relieved. He thought it would be a lot harder. Krot just says he negotiated really well and asks where he learned that. Obviously, he can't say he used to work in a sales company, so he decides to totally ignore the question and says maybe now's a good time for a drink. But someone was watching and saw that he had gone into the mercenary guild. It's suspicious for a noble to be in this region. That's because Poznu is the only free city in this land, right? No nobles. No one rules it except the people. It's known as the famous sanctuary of mercenaries. That's because no matter what crime you've committed, here, it's forgiven. It could be a runaway slave, a noble who fled another nation, or even someone who killed 1,000,000. In Poznu, everything is forgiven. The only thing everyone is required to do is fight the monster wave that comes from the mountains. It all started because when monsters kill people and feed, they seem to return to the mountain. And that's why the first ones sent to face them were always criminals and people who, if they died, it wouldn't matter. And it's because of that start that the city became what it is. And this buffed up guy full of muscle is the underworld boss named Walter, and he says this is really bold. In front of him is someone called Corvus, and he wants to know how the bastard has the courage to show up there. Corvus replies that considering the past, his own head should have been taken. But as a Black Knight, all of that was left behind. Walter's pissed that this bastard is mocking him, but he's more curious how trash like this guy managed to reach class 6. So he tells him to spit out what he wants. Walter comments about a group of nobles who arrived in the city and asks if he knows anything. Walter says no, and Corvus replies that they seem to have made some kind of request to the mercenaries, and he's there to order them to properly investigate why. Walter asks what the pay is, and the guy says there will be an advance, but the real payment depends on the quality of the information he brings. Plus, he better act quickly, or he'll end up with nothing. With that, Corvus leaves and Walter's burning with the desire to kill the bastard. He tells his guys to bring everything, and shortly after, the document is on the table. When he takes a look at the request, he wonders, is this lunatic trying to start a war? The guy reads, danger level A, duration of 3 months, and a force of nearly 200 men. This wasn't a war since they didn't border any enemy nation. Walter says he understands, but this was a high-rank mission. Not to mention that dungeons are made for small elite teams, not brute forces like that. Maybe it was some kind of hunt. He doesn't get it. Corvus says it doesn't make sense. If it were a hunt for a few monsters, they'd just lose money, and obviously they couldn't be that stupid. Walter suggests ending the kid before sending that many mercenaries to their deaths, or robbing the boy. Corvus, however, replies that apparently he's always walking around the class 5 knight. A buddy says that the other one is class 6, so they should just kill. But Corvus says it is impossible to kill a class 5 without leaving a trace behind, meaning everything would be found out. Not to mention that if in the middle of all this the kid uses a return scroll, then everything's over. For now, it's best to wait for the perfect opportunity. They'll assume the boy's target is the dungeon and act accordingly. But obviously, once he enters that place, he won't be able to use a return scroll, and that's when they'll strike. The guy asks if the plan is to just take out the mercenaries, and the reply is yes. Now I'm confused. Why are they trying to kill our boy? What did he do to these guys, man? He just arrived in the city, hired some mercenaries, and that's not allowed. But there it is, Walter says killing without mercenaries won't be easy, so he expects extra payment. The guy responds that he'll be paid whatever he wants. Not by him, but by the one who hired him, someone with much more money than him and who knows what they're doing. Ah, now it's clear. Looks like someone's trying to assassinate our boy, probably the guys from the Empire. Okay, the pieces are falling into place. In this city, there are 3 mercenary groups, man, and the reason each of them came together wasn't because they like each other. No. For example, the Black Wing guys were thrown out as food for the monsters, while the Shield guys were the ones who didn't let them escape and get eaten, so they were fine. At the same time, conflict was avoided because at any moment, the guys from Red Wolf were eager to wipe out the other 2. But none of the 3 groups start a war because their strength is about even, and the one not involved would take advantage. That's how an extremely delicate balance is maintained, and the city, in theory, is peaceful. The groups, however, are constantly watching each other, looking for any sign of battle or preparation. Meanwhile, back in the Steel Shield mercenaries' camp, someone shouts that the bastards are preparing. The white-haired guy asks what's going on, and the other explains that it looks like the Black Wing people are bringing everyone back from outside to the headquarters. If that's the case, it's time for them to get ready too. Looks like a fight's about to start in the city, and the scene shifts to Urina's castle. Someone says no way, and she's insisting, saying that if she's a hostage, she has to go with him wherever he goes. Obviously, it's our boy who says he hasn't invested in her yet, so she's not a hostage. Also, it'd be good if she stopped saying that nonsense every time they talk. Urina says that if she doesn't go, he'll end up regretting it later. He's a bit confused, wondering why she's so confident saying something like that. Misha replies that fine, she can go to the dungeon entrance and no further. After that, she could make a little hut and wait there for him. She accepts immediately, and he already realizes this brat must be planning to go to the entrance and sneak in. But then Aridona appears. I was already wondering if this woman would really let that girl go. And she says that no matter how strong or secure she is, taking a girl like that to the front of a dungeon is insane. He replies that it's not his fault. She's the one insisting. But Aridona answers that even though Urina is a princess with her own opinions, she's still a child and he's responsible. Confused, he replies that he's a child too, and clearly he opposed it. Aridona instantly pulls the princess away, and our boy finally feels relieved. But he also realizes that Aridona doesn't seem to like him from the very beginning. Our boy says that Aridona needs someone to take care of her. He's not sure if he means a man or what, but he thinks she's way too obsessed with Urina, though she doesn't have such a bad appearance. If she found someone to take care of the girl, maybe she'd chill out a bit. Yeah, my man literally said she needs a husband. In the bar, the guys are talking about the madame and how much she cares about the young girl. One of them looks over with a big mug in hand and says they should have killed that noble the last time he visited. Then the other guy hands over the money and says not to worry, that they'll keep an eye on them. The guy says that the brat must have seduced the young girl, and now she's probably all deluded by his sweet little promises. He didn't like that guy from the moment he saw him. But one in the hood isn't saying anything, and he asks what the next orders are. What was he thinking? And what were they gonna do if everyone gets dragged into that dungeon? Urina could end up dead. The guy slams the mug on the table and says the boy is knave, thinks that to win in a dungeon, all you need is more people. His friend agrees and says things are only getting worse since it looks like the Steel guys and Black Wing are about to start a war. The one in the hood says this is the perfect chance for them to join the mission and hang back just to observe. After that, they return to eliminate or negotiate with the survivors. Now back to our boy. A guy walks through the door and introduces himself as Trias. Anything related to the mercenary group should be discussed with him. Calyx seems surprised, and the guy even has a paper proving he's a rank S. He immediately asks if Calyx wants him to choose the people who'll join the mission, but our boy is just staring at him, which leaves Trias a little confused. As always, he's looking at a status window that we don't get to see. Damn it, man. What do you think this is, an anime? Put that thing on the screen already, you bastard. Our boy seems lucky to have found this guy who asks what the issue is, but Calyx says nothing. He just says you can choose, but if you think 10 people are enough, hire 13. Trias says the contract shows he wants to inspect everyone at the end before participation, but he adds that even those who are selected but don't participate will be paid the same. He asks if Calyx is sure about that. Calyx agrees, and the guy says okay then. Help prepare everything. Then our boy hands him a paper and says he also wants everyone to bring one item from the list. These were the resources needed for the dungeon exploration, but only he should know the entire list. Trias says he understands. It must be for confidentiality and asks if there's anything else. Our boy says no, but then the guy adds just one more thing. How did the boy find this place? Our boy is confused, and the guy asks if he has a favorite companion at the house. Reminder, our boy is currently living at the girl's brothel, and strangely, Calyx seems to realize this guy probably likes Aridona. Not sure how. Maybe he sensed some jealousy. Our boy's got 300 IQ. But he explains he was just at a bar, asked for a quieter place, and ended up being introduced to the house. He felt comfortable there and decided to stay. He asks why the guy wants to know that, and the guy says it's nothing. But clearly the man's thinking at least the boy has no intentions with the madame. Feeling relieved, he then asks if Calyx plans to hire more mercenaries. In his experience, there are only 2 types of rank missions. Those where mercenaries are hired just to die, with no chance of victory or obviously a dungeon expedition. Calyx realizes this guy is already sure he's not preparing for war, but at the very least he doesn't know which dungeon Calyx is aiming for. What he finds strange is why the guy is suggesting hiring more people if he doesn't know any of that. Then he asks, "Are you trying to say I should worry not just about the dungeon, but also the people in the party who might be there just to steal the treasure at the end?" Trias says yes, it's costly, but hiring a few extra hands would be important. Yeah, it'd be important if those hands didn't also want to steal your treasure at the end, right, man? Then you'd have to hire someone to watch those people too, and it'd become an infinite loop. But Calyx responds that he has no intention of doing that. Besides, he didn't have any enemies among the three major powers of this place. Trias is thinking the kid is more naive than he thought. He's being an idiot if he thinks hired mercenaries wouldn't hurt a noble. The problem is that if he insists on this, the contract might end up getting wiped. In the worst case scenario, if things got too dangerous, he'd flee with the Madame and Urena. He says he understands, gives the contract a final check, and with that, it's sealed. Calyx is eager to see how the plan is going to unfold. 3 days later, in a forest near the city, our boy put on his emo clown outfit and Trias says the 260 people he requested are there. The guy, however, is impressed that the kid actually pulled off such an impressive job. Calyx thanks him and says now it's time to begin. He points at a guy and says he's to leave. Everyone's shouting, but Calyx is kicking people out of the army. A while later, Trias says some of the guys he's trying to remove are a bit more resistant than he expected. Our boy tells him to keep an eye on those. Whoever's resisting is probably acting as a spy. Trias asks why, and he says it's obvious, man. A mission this dangerous, anyone would want out. If someone is being given a chance to not die, they should be happy. Now, if they're mercenaries planted by someone, not only would they insist on participating, but even the 50% they received up front wouldn't be enough, since that money would go to whoever hired them. Trias says it makes a lot of sense, and our boy says they should move out already. He knows he hasn't eliminated all the spies, but at least he reduced the chances of this place's info leaking. Then he gets on his course and tells everyone to advance. Along the way, Urena calls for him and asks if he liked her little gift. Looks like she informed Calyx that he's become the target of one of the big powers, and he thanks her, saying that was quite the move. For our boy, all the pieces were now on the board. He knew who was hunting him, and he also had Trias nearby who wanted to protect the Madame, so he served as a double shield. But then Urena asks if he's really that confident about it. She assumes he knows, but the creatures from the Impala Mountains are extremely fierce. Our boy replies that he feels like he's in his own backyard in that place. Confused, she says that makes no sense, since he was raised in Shiken, to which he answers that for some reason he's always dreamed about that place. Suddenly, from behind, Trias asks if he's really not going to say what the final destination is. The area is full of different monsters and territories, and they couldn't just keep marching without knowing where they're headed. At the very least, they should figure it out and send someone ahead to scout the path. Calyx refuses, and the guy tells Krot to say something, but he replies he won't say anything. He trusts his lord 100%. Trias, however, has seen plenty of mercenaries die because of nobles' stupidity. It's a shame, but if things start to get tight, he'll definitely have to pull back. Obviously, some mercs will die, but he can't afford to lose the important ones. Then our boy tells Krot to climb a tree and check the surroundings. Krot obeys and says he sees a goblin camped 500 meters away and asks what they'll do. Our boy replies that it's obvious. They're going to go over there and kill everything, man. Krot comes down and says it's dangerous. Goblin blood can get on your clothes and end up attracting more creatures. Calyx just responds that if someone gets messy killing a goblin, they should give up being a knight. Trias is confused that the guy could see 500 meters away just by climbing a tree. Our boy tells him to check another area and he sees that 400 meters away there are 10 orc houses. Calyx says that's too little and tells him to look somewhere else. While Trias is in disbelief, saying it must be coincidence, like how could anyone have vision like that? Krot then says there's a null settlement 650 meters away. Calyx says that one's a great target, while Trias